Welcome to the Global Discussion, a discussion with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. My name is Simon Hodgkins. Today, delighted to be joined by Antonio Vieira Santos. Antonio, you're very welcome to the show. Before we get into it, let's begin by asking you to introduce yourself and let our audience know a little bit about what you do. So over to you, Antonio.
Okay, thank you, Simon. It's really nice to talk with you, and having the opportunity to connect in this way. Well, I'm live in Cork in the south of Ireland. I moved here in 2006 to work for Siemens. Uh, I used to work in the telco industry before I came here, just to be short on that. And then things have evolved. The company have made some changes. I ended up working to the company that I work today. That's Eviden, part of the Atos group. I've been working in terms of a digital workplace, future of work activities, working from home for quite some time. And lately, I've been focused on business to business innovation initiatives, trying to understand how we can innovate. There's so, if we look at this topic, it's so broad, so generic, so many books written, every year about innovation. But my angle is how can we innovate, but at the same time, we don't leave people behind. So I have a strong focus on accessibility, making sure that the tools and technologies work for people with disabilities. And basically, this is my intro.
Well, thanks very much indeed for giving us a little bit of context. And let's start off with something that you mentioned a moment ago, which is the accessibility. And I know that you talk about being accessibility centric. And in this digital transformation, this sort of new AI world that we're living in, and all this innovation work that you're involved in, can you just maybe expand on that when it comes to being accessibility centric? What does that actually mean, and why is that so important today?
Well, we know that when we navigate on the web, we know that around 80% of the websites are not accessible to people with disabilities. Uh, so just that fact, we are in 2024. The web is not just a young kid anymore as grow up, but still many of the technology that we have today is not accessible for a large part of the population. So being accessibility centric is when we are developing products and solutions, we are always mindful that you need to focus from the start that whatever you build, whatever technology you are touching, you need to make sure that you engage with people with disabilities, that you listen, that you make sure that you are not building something that is going to turn in what we someone call digital pollution. So what I mean by this is we're not going to call this end up building a solution that elements people might not be able to use because they have a disability. So somehow accessibility centric is about focusing from the start in making sure that the products and solutions are accessible to people with disabilities, not just as an opinion and or about what you think that might be, but also about involving people with disabilities in that part of the conversation from a very early stage.
No, and such an important part when it comes to accessibility, and also when it comes to things like user experience, the design aspects of things, such a critical piece. Now, we talked about your current role, and I know you do an awful lot around innovation. You're somewhat of an innovation evangelist, but you're also somebody who has, if I'm not mistaken, been in the entrepreneurial world, six different companies, I think, maybe more at this stage. Has that all helped you in terms of the type of work that you do today? Because you've seen it from, you know, big company side, startup growth side. That must play into a lot of the learning that you've picked up along the way, Antonio.
No, yeah, yes, it does. That's very true. No, no. Aside from my corporate job, I always try to do my own thing outside work. No, a few months ago, well, there was an event focused on startups that took place at the Republic of Work in Cork. People could go present their ideas, their business, and I just no. Let me go there, go with an idea, doesn't matter if it's going to work or if it's not going to work, but it exposes you to a group of people, to other opinions, and you have that kind of a feedback out of your comfort zone. So that has been my, my run into the startup world has been in that way, trying things outside the corporate world, engaging with different people, getting that feedback, that knowledge, engaging with different generations, because the people who are, this brings you to usually to gives you the chance to be with people from a different age group than the one that sometimes you have at work. So that has been, it's a great experience that I advise everyone to do. And on the way, I create, I've been associated with Plus 10. It was a startup focused on co-working in Cork. It ran a few years by Fergus Murphy, and then we ended up shutting down. I've been involved with another one in LTech called Tech V that is still going. No, it's a very small venture, but allows me to focus on different things. Um, that I usually don't have the chance to do as working for a large corporation. And in the overall, it's very helpful. It helps you with your personal development. It's a that's one of the reasons why I do it, most of it.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And as well as your current role, you also spend quite a bit of time as well, I know, in various organizations and groups. I know you're a co-founder and a board member in your own right at this sort of global platform that you basically dedicate to promoting accessibility. But you're also involved in things like women in tech. That's something that you've been
Yeah,
involved in now for
yeah,
almost 6 years, I think, maybe more.
yeah.
And also you mentioned Cork and the future of work, and I'm just conscious from a international audience perspective, some of them may not know what that initiative is about, but you're also part of that digital transformation lab down in Cork, and you've been there for quite a number of years. Could you maybe expand on those a little bit? Because some people may not even be aware of what some of those activities are, and they're really important.
On the early days of womenintech.org, I engaged with them with the founders. I've been uh, judge of some of the international awards that they did, and I'm part of the board of their Portuguese chapter. So it's an international group of women who mix with men and try to exchange ideas. Uh, and what I like in that group is that it's very international. So when you are at any of the events, you have women from all over the world. You have men, and it's part of that interchange. And we are there as allies to support and to bring our own networks to support the initiatives that they are doing. I have a daughter. I have a wife. I think it's also part of the process, making sure that women not only have more access to technology, but have a more relevant role in technology. Uh, in terms of the digital transformation lab, that it was an initiative that started by Professor Paddy O'Reilly, and then with Tony Moroni, and with others, uh, where they invited me as someone from the industry to do some activities, to create a few podcasts, to create some videos and events, to bring some external perspective to this group within the this informal group that works within the University of Cork. So it's just a way of bringing people from the academia, people from the industry, and have this kind of a space of networking where we exchange ideas.
Well, thank you for sharing that and expanding on that for us. And I know Cork has a real vibrant hub, as do lots of different pockets around Europe and the world. But there's a lot going on in that sort of ecosystem in Cork. And to that point, I wanted to ask you about, and we have to bring the word up, but artificial intelligence, because given, from your Siemens days through to all the work that you're doing now, artificial intelligence is kind of being added to everything that we do. And I'm sure it's playing its part, whether that's in accessibility or whether it's in digital transformation. or whether it's in startups. You must be seeing that in lots of places. I'd be very interested to get your view on where you think we're at in artificial intelligence, and maybe some views on where you think we're going with it. Just give us your little sort of viewpoint. Would you mind, Antonio?
Yes, I don't know, but it's a very interesting topic. Is capturing everyone's imagination in a positive and in a negative way. There's some very interesting cartoons, about AI. I have a pen here. If I add AI, you just double the price of my pen. So it's a, but if we go into the space of accessibility, one of the areas that AI, and I personally use it, um, is to, for example, to be able to produce subtitles for a video, or alt text for an image. Joe Devon, the founder of Global Accessibility Awareness Day, created an agent within ChatGPT that allows you to upload the picture, and then it gives you back um, the alt text for that image. So on your website, or when you are sharing images on social media, you can use that to make sure that someone has the context of that image. No, it's not perfect. It's important that when you are doing these tasks, you are able to provide context about what that image is about. Otherwise, it could just say, it's a man, doing this or doing that. It doesn't identify you. So the context is important. So I've seen some very interesting usage in that matter, and it's a very efficient way for everyone to use and to improve the way how they share content across social media by making sure that images have alt text. Um, in other areas, I've seen it being used as a way at the industrial level to improve the way how people interact with machines and how they retain knowledge. So could be a factory where has a series of robots and machines working, where you are able to create an agent that allows you to interact with the old software that is connected with that machine. So you are able to ask, instead of writing code, you can just ask questions to the machine, and the machine will reply you back. Uh, at the same time, if you have employees uh, in that factory who are more experienced, you are able to build on the knowledge of those employees and bring that knowledge to the database. So when new hires or new employees go to the factory, they are able to access to that knowledge through the means of these conversations that you have with the AI.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing that. And I know that you have Antonio's blog, and
Yes.
I know that you kind of coin it as sort of chats and conversations that you could have over a cup of coffee. Are you using AI behind the scenes in that in any way? Is that just somewhere that people can go to maybe catch up on some of your thoughts on digital innovation and technology? And you've been doing that for a while because there's a lot of content in that blog.
No, I say I don't take myself very serious on that blog. This is more a way for me to experience with technology. So I use it as I use artificial intelligence to compose and resume ideas. I do a podcast on accessibility. So what I usually do is we have the transcript from the podcast, and then I use AI to resume the ideas, to create, let's say, a draft of the blog. Then I go and improve it. So I'm definitely using it. I'm also using it to create alt text for the images on the blog. It's quite. I'm using it now in the overall to try how can we use AI to create SEO titles and all things that you need to do to put together WordPress. For me, uh, some people, I'm going to take a course on this, I'm going to take a course on that. I use my blog as my own course and my own training. Is a way for me to experience things under my own control to have fun. And of course, on the way, if I'm traveling to an event, or if I'm doing an interview with someone, I will use the blog to talk about, to post there as part of what I do.
And you mentioned the podcast, and I want to talk about AXSChat, from this
Yeah.
accessibility perspective. Tell us a bit about your video and audio work then, because you are meeting with some very interesting folks in that environment too.
No, about we're doing it for almost for a decade. It started a little bit on the good days of Twitter, when myself and my colleague Neil, we were working on accessibility at work, and we were looking at people who were also out there talking about accessibility, and we found Deborah Rue, who is a well-known expert on accessibility in the United States, and we went to Deborah. Oh, you are trying to do something here, right? But you are not really, do you know what you are up to? And said, no. And she told, yes, I want to host conversation on accessibility, but I'm just trying to figure out how to do it. So, and then we realized, why don't we try to do something together? So, and from that moment on, we start, okay, let's start a podcast, and then do regular conversations on Twitter on the format of a Twitter chat. And from that moment on, we started to um, our first guest was Garrett Ford Williams, was the lead person on accessibility at the BBC, an innovator on that space that built the team and built most of the technology that made the BBC gold standard on accessibility. And from Garrett, we start to uh, reach out to our network to find people from to ask our guests, oh, who should we invite, and then through word of mouth, we're able to have more people, and that's how develop from there. We always try to make sure that we are able to bring people working in accessibility from different parts of the world, because there are different perspectives. If you need to support people with disabilities in Africa or in South America, you have certain level of resources, people work in a certain way. So you need to make sure that the conversation that you are having uh, also engages with the needs of people in this area. So we bring experts from all over the world precisely because of that, because we want to know these kind of practices that are taking place, because we live in a privileged area of the world, and sometimes we believe that technology is the solution for everything, and sometimes you go to other countries and you find ingenious solutions that you never thought, because you have access to so much tech that you forget that sometimes there are simple ways to solve the problem.
No, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. And it's back to that technology as a tool. It's not necessarily the answer to everything. And I like what you're saying there. And it brings me back to something that you said, which is about the way we work today. So your conversations over the last decade, but continue today, very vibrant information that's shared. It really is a global community now at this stage. And the benefit of that is back to that term, the future of work. I know we were talking about what goes on in Cork in that context, but there's a big topic at the moment about the future of work, about how we are more inclusive in the workplace, and of course, accessibility is part of that. What are your views on that in terms of how we work today? People talk about post-pandemic and that international reach that, at least when I came out of school and college, it wasn't there. It was very difficult to do even what we're doing today. It was
Yeah.
just a pipe dream. So, what are your views on that, Antonio?
Well, we went before the pandemic. There were already a good number of companies and organizations that were very pro no, remote work. They were, and we can almost look at some of these ideas back to the 70s, related with the at the time with the oil crisis, that where scientists and researchers were trying to find new ways of people to work and facing the reality of the time. However, we know that by the experience that I have at work and with my colleagues, that sometimes remote work is a reality that works, but sometimes might not work for everyone, and people might need a different pace to adjust. So not everyone might be able to start working remotely overnight, and might need some weeks or months, and or might need help and training. Today, when we look at the way we work at large companies, we know that there are plenty of training on compliance, training on cybersecurity, training on health and safety. There are a series of standard training that almost everyone at every organization has. But very few organizations train people how to collaborate, how to communicate with other people. Usually that training is not there. So when today we see leaders and entities, we need to bring, well, the only place where we can collaborate and innovate is the office. We are talking about people who never received that type of training, who never engaged in the curiosity and see how can we collaborate in different ways, and how can we use remote as part of the overall solution. Of course, if you ask me, no. Antonio, no, let's meet for a coffee next week in Cork, and I'm up for it. I think we what we need to make sure is that we don't, just because we don't know how to handle a situation, we just don't put it behind without making the effort of learning it. And sometimes that's one of the things that I observed over the last couple of years is when people try to argue against remote work, I don't see the effort of learning how it can work.
I think it's a great point that you've raised. And, I was kind of nodding my head there as you were saying, we all do cybersecurity training or health and safety training or compliance and regulatory type activities that have to be done. And yet, when it comes to the basic, which is human collaboration, human interaction, whether it's in person or like this, maybe that is underserved, to your point. And also, I think the way that you manage remotely, to some degree, it's not necessarily the same as you manage in a in office, in factory type scenario. Because there's kind of a shift, isn't there, from time and attendance to results and output. I think that's a good thing,
Yeah.
but I think we're still applying in some areas the old time and attendance metrics, meaning are you busy, to actually what we're trying to do, which is deliver outcomes. Would you agree with that or not?
Yes, yes, I do agree. Uh, and and we know that remote and the flexibility of work uh, allows organizations to be more inclusive. No, um, I was in June. I was at the artificial intelligence event in Germany. I can share later the links of what I'm going to talk here. And there was a professor, a researcher from the UK, doing studies on AI and basically how to retain women. Why companies were not able to retain women in AI, and one of the reasons was the lack of flexibility. So uh, women were studying in the fields of AI. Sometimes when they were finishing their studies, they would say, "Oh, there's a great opportunity on this big multinational. I really need to take it." And then they were moving to this big organization and they would stay for 12, 18 months. And then they would leave because there was not enough flexibility to their needs. Now, we have women who went into the space of AI at the later age of their lives, who have kids, who have families, who are, in some cases, they are carers of their family members, and they end up leaving the companies because there was not really this type of flexibility. So I would, so remote and flexibility can actually be a booster of innovation and diversity at any organization. But always, I think is always, is not obviously a solution for everything. You know, if I could meet my team on a regular basis, every 2 months. I think that it's if you have the chance to meet people face to face from time to time, that is also a good thing. But we also know that people like uh, uh, like Automatic from WordPress, who is an organization that has been working remotely for many years and being very successful in the space of digital. So I think that they also point, and they are also a reference for those who say, "Oh, can this work?" Yes, Automatic is doing it for so many years, and I think is a good example of someone that uh, is one of the early adopters of this way of working, having a multiplicity of collaborators all over the world.
Yeah, I think there's two great points there that I'd like to maybe just reiterate, which is, that ability to tap into a global workforce, I think, is a huge benefit. Um, and also the flexibility that you were talking about. That's really important for lots of people who, whether they've got busy lives, big families, small families, or on their own, having that flexibility, we've seen that being very important, particularly with new people coming into the work environment, whether that's remote or hybrid or, fixed in place locations. And that flexibility seems to be something that's craved more and more. I'm not sure whether that's just a byproduct of the pandemic, people reevaluating what's important to them in life or not, but certainly access to a global talent pool, access to flexibility, access to being able to work in a different environment certainly brings together that word you used, which was inclusivity, and it certainly helps in lots of cases. And I think you're also making the point, if I'm understanding correctly, that this isn't a one size fits all strategy either, because everybody has a slightly different set of
Yeah.
scenarios depending on where you are in life and what's happening in your life, correct?
Correct. We talked before about training. Today you have new employees joining the workforce, and when they are on this journey, sometimes when they get the job offer, uh, a few days later they receive a package at home with a laptop, with a water bottle, with a cap, and that's the workplace. So, but what I found is it's important, they receive that, they're going to work from home, but they also need we need to pay close attention to the new employees, particularly to those who are getting to the workforce for the first time, how we welcome them and how we onboard them on the process, because they just came out of university. They don't have the work networks that we have. So it's important to mentor them in the right way, to try to find a way where they are able to build their own professional networks within this new structure, within these new tools. If you leave them behind, otherwise, what is going to happen there? They might end up feeling disengaged with work. They might feel lonely, and that's something that we need to find ways to mitigate, because when you are working from home, you don't have that experience. We need to pay attention to people's mental health. uh, uh, that that's why it's really important to be very supportive of young employees when they join workforce, and that workforce is basically operates in the remote mode.
Oh, 100%. Thank you, Antonio. So when you look forward in the work that you're doing, which you have to do from time to time, particularly to be innovative and to, look at all that sort of wonderful world of technology that you've been involved in and immersed in. If you think about the year ahead, how does that work in your world today? I mean, is it a planning ritual? Is it, annual goals? Is it a roadmap? How do you go about that? What's on your mind? What's on your roadmap? How does that work in your world today?
Uh, the work that I do on accessibility and considering where we are, today, and how much progress is needed, is something that is always on my roadmap. So it's part of everything that I do in the future, and something that I'm always looking is I'm always trying to discover new people in different areas. You know, AI is booming. I'm always trying to expand my network to see what people are doing. I don't really have, I don't have a roadmap for the next 12 months. I'm always discovering. I'm always, it's almost like a boat at sea without knowing where it's going to arrive next, but always, oh, there's a new island there. Let's meet the people who are there. Maybe I can learn something from them. That more or less resumes how I work and how I operate.
I like that. Very inquisitive, finding out what the next adventure just around the next corner.
Yeah.
That's great. And look, before we run out of time, is there any sort of parting thoughts or anything else you want to expand on with our worldwide audience today? And finally, I want to ask you that if people want to connect with you, find out more about all these great discussions that you're having and all this great information that you're sharing, where do you want me to point people to so they can find out more about it, Antonio?
Okay. No, in terms of in terms of topics and things that I would like to pick up, think about, I would reinforce, uh, in the topic of accessibility and inclusion, making sure that when you are doing something, you at least have this in mind, that you don't that you are mindful that people with disabilities might need to access and should have the same rights as everyone else to access to resources, tools. Could be a hotel room, could be booking holidays, could be just getting into the airplane, or even a kid who is at home and needs to use um, the tools to learn uh, to complete his studies. So I think that's an area that I want people to look into and to consider as part of their life, that they make sure that how important that is. And if you want to reach me out, or the best way is to go on LinkedIn, and you should be able to find me there. I have my blog. Uh, um, but I think LinkedIn will be the best place today. Probably like many other people, I'm trying to look, to Blue Sky, Mastodon, Threads, trying to see in which platform I'm able to find my tribe or people who are interesting. But as a home, LinkedIn is probably the best place.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. We've all got well, a lot of us have the Threads, the Mastodon, the Blue Sky, the X, formerly known as Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. We just keep going through them. And I think LinkedIn seems to be the place where there's a lot of activity going on. So, listen, thank you very much indeed for expanding on the topic, that very important topic of accessibility, and also letting people know where's the best place to connect with you. And that brings us nicely, Antonio, to the end of our episode today here on the Global Discussion. I just want to thank everybody who's been watching or listening to this episode today. I want to ask them to like and to follow and to share this episode just to help us build on what we're doing here. And I hope that they'll join me back here, of course, for more great discussions with creatives and leaders and thinkers just like Antonio. But thanks for being a guest on the show, Antonio. It's great to catch up with you again today.
My pleasure.